This is not.
Oh, so
this is
my
another-
cousin's back.
All right.
So then when you open it up, it's taking you to the internet. See what I'm saying? So you would need to go to like boardmap.com. Hopefully it'll be able to do it that way. Well,
We have to wait till 7 o'clock on the button,
Oh, it's only 6.
6:59. Last time I asked somebody for a joke, we got a pretty good one.
I have one.
You got a half a minute?
I can't tell it here.
Are we
No,
on?
you won't.
Joe,
Good,
are
it's-
we on?
It's 7 o'clock, yep. All right, I'd like to welcome you all to the council meeting tonight, and we'll start with the invocation from Diane.
Father, we thank you that we all made it safely here tonight, and we ask that you guide each person safely home. We come at the end of a busy day for many of us, and at this time, we want to focus our minds so that we have clear thoughts and make good decisions. We thank you for the young people represented in this room and the interest that they're showing in how our government works and how we can operate and how citizens can have a voice in what we do. We're grateful that we can represent the people that live in this city, help us make the best decisions for all. Amen.
All right, and I'd like the Boy Scouts from Troop 730 to come up. They're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight, and maybe the Scout Oath as well, or Pledge, whichever one they want to do. All right.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can you all stay there and please, yes, you want to do the oath
so long.
or the pledge? Okay, perfect.
On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country and to obey the Scout law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight.
All right, thank you. Would you each say your name before you go back to this, your seat in the microphone there, please?
My name is Kevin.
All right.
Jackson.
My name's Owen.
My name's Huston.
Ethan.
Joseph.
All right. And Bill, do you want to come up and talk a little bit about, we can sit down now, talk a little bit about Troop 730? I was told tonight they're the oldest troop in the county.
We actually are the longest chartered troop, which is sponsored by the United Methodist Church down here on Indiana Street. It's actually more than 85 years that they have actually chartered us. We meet there on Monday nights, either out downtown or down at the Connections. And I've been involved with Scouts for probably 27 years, and my son eagled out, and that's what we are working on now. Is one of the merit badges that's required is learning how government and the community works. So that's why we're here tonight, to get a chance to watch it in life, real life.
Great. And would you introduce, I know Bob is,
Yes, Bob Kofout, he's our charter organization rep with the church and the troop. He's been involved with Scouts for probably even longer than that, 30 years as a youth and that. Yeah.
Right.
And then Brad Bibler is one of the assistant scoutmasters. And then our committee chair is Marilyn Humming. She helps keep everything on track, trying to keep scheduled.
Great. And Bob's a member of our plan commission, and he's on this side of the table once a month, so you guys can maybe come back and watch him in action too, so.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate having you here tonight. All right, let's start with the approval of minutes. Before we do that, let the minutes reflect that we have two members gone tonight. Jeff Gross and Jack Wilhite are absent. There are 5 members here, quorum of 4 votes needed to pass to take any action. So with that, I'll ask for the approval of the minutes from the October 3rd meeting. Those were presented in board pack.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Josh Finch to approve the minutes, and Mike seconded that. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I'm just abstaining since I wasn't here.
Okay. 4-0 with 1 abstention, so it passes. And again, thanks to our visitors tonight. We appreciate your involvement, and always happy to have you here. We've got a few reports. Lynn, you put the investment report in, and did I see a 4% in there somewhere?
You did, starting with, at the bottom, they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And 4 and 5 were above 4%, and then 6 and 7 were done earlier in the quarter, and they were about a little over 2.5. So that's looking up.
Yep, we're inching up.
Lynn, we have one, I see, number 1, that's gonna time out here pretty quick next month. Any idea what we might be able to
It might be
read?
pretty close to the 4.
Okay.
Hard to tell now, but I'm assuming it'll be close to around there.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you, Lynn, for your magic.
Yeah, right. You're welcome.
And then item 2 would just be the fund report for the month. Are there any questions? So that's just for your information. Well, let's move on to unfinished business. Item 1 is ordinance 2022-1001, 2023. Second reading. We had a public hearing at the last meeting. The budget was approved, and tax rates, appropriations and tax rates were approved. And we're here tonight for the second reading. I know I talked a little bit last meeting about these forms and how they're basically our starting point. We will be working with our departments. We've got a little bit of paring down to do. We certainly want to attempt to balance this budget this year. It's going to be a little bit tougher with the inflation that's going on. We gave our employees, I think, a well-deserved or proposed a well-deserved 4% raise. We did have a 5% growth factor in the levy, so we were able to increase that rate. And we've also had, again, very favorable expansion of our assessed value, which has broadened the tax base, and hopefully we'll keep that rate down very close to what it has been this year. To be continued on that, we'll, as we work down through this and get our line 1 cuts and reduce some of our spending, we'll end up hopefully very, very close to where we were last year. I'd also add that Lynn and her group have done a great job keeping all the departments at least that 20% minimum reserve. So that would be the cash available at the end of the year, projected at the end of 23, divided by the budget itself. So, and all those budgets are at least 20% at this point, and probably higher, because we didn't factor in the line 2 cuts. So my guess is they're probably up significantly more than what they're at right now in this budget. This budget also just takes into account a 90% of assessed value, and right now it's not. I mean, with the current rate that it's showing, let's see, is 140. Where is it, Lynn?
150.
150, and that's with a 90% AV, and again, we're hoping to get that way down. So using the 100% certified AV, we'll drop that, and then hopefully more cuts will drop that even further. And again, the goal is to keep our at least minimum of 20% reserves, and try and get through our budget without any major cuts, but I'm sure there are things we're going to have to probably prioritize a little bit lower maybe, and maybe even remove from the budget this year to make that happen. So with that, I would ask if there are any questions before we consider ordinance 2022-1001. And for all of you keeping track, that's budget form 4, if you get onto Gateway. Lynn helped me today with the 4Bs. She provided those for me, and I had a chance later today to go through there and again, assess our cash balances and what we're going to need to try and cut out of the budget, and I feel very confident we'll be there, so.
Well, having heard all that information, I'd make a motion, we pass ordinance 2022-1001.
All right, thank you, Diane. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, Cindy, thank you. Further discussion? So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. So now you know our next step, once this is submitted, and by the way, it does pass 5-0. Once this gets submitted, then we'll just be in line waiting for our 1782 notice, which is the finalization of the budget. We have a chance to respond, and that's typically the point where we'll utilize our line 1 cuts to get that rate down. They'll also have the full assessed value on there, and we'll be able to get it right down to where it needs to be. But again, we've got a little work to do. The departments have some work to do to make this happen. We're still a little bit over budget at this point, but this time of year, it's not unusual. The departments do a great job of presenting their wish list, and then they understand that needs come first, and there may be some wishes that we have to do without. So, after 11 years, that's pretty
Just
much
like
what it boils down to.
Every year.
So, yep. All right, well, thank you all. All right, so we've got 3 ordinances all on second reading. They're salary ordinances. These ordinances set the salaries, the high point of the salaries. And we had our hearing last month on these, and we'll now consider them on second reading. And Danny Harlan, our HR specialist, will present tonight for your final consideration.
Okay, I believe the first one was the general salary ordinance.
Yes, sir.
It's 10:03.
Yes, I'm sorry, 2022-1003, the general salary ordinance.
Okay, once again, it was 4% across the board. We bumped the board pay from $35 to $50 per meeting for board members. And we added 1 position at the street department as superintendent's assistant, or the lead admin assistant in that department.
All right, are there any questions?
Danny, do you want to go over the change in the
Oh, there
medical?
was one clerical change because of my inexperience. Under the insurance premiums, those needed to end in a even number so that the clerk's office could take it out of 2 payrolls. So all of them that had an odd number, we took down 1 cent so that they can make that easier on the payroll system.
So is that reflected in this ordinance?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions on that? Okay.
So I'll make a motion, we pass ordinance 2022-1003 as amended.
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Diane. Josh, second. Any further questions? Comments? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, passes 5-0. Thank you. Let's move on to 2022-1005. This would be the 2023 fire salary ordinance. Danny?
Okay, on the fire salary, the biggest, it was 4% to their base pay. We did not do anything with their rank incentive, as we did the mid-year, we made it pretty well for them on that. We did bump up the EMS division chief to where he was on equal footing with the battalion chiefs. And then we also added into his job description the duties that he takes care of with the CARES program as well. Added the public safety education team member stipend at $500 a year, and the acting officer stipend of $25 per shift if there is a fireman that gets to bump up to an officer position for the shift.
And then the same correction was made on the insurance.
Yes, same corrections for the insurance. That was on all three of the salary ordinances you'll see tonight.
Are we doing fire right now?
Yes.
Okay, all right. This was out of order on me.
Pardon me?
It's out of order on the agenda. I got it.
Oh, well, it's item 3.
I got it.
Okay. All right. Any further questions? All right, is there a motion to take action on 2022-1005 on second reading?
I'd so move.
All right, Jerry moves for approval. Is there a second?
I would second that.
All right, Cindy, thank you. Any final questions or discussions before we vote? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, passes 5-0. And item 4, be police, 2023 police salary ordinance, 2022-1004. Again, on second reading, passed unanimously on first reading and after public hearing. And Denny's here to, again, just review that before we take a final vote.
Again, 4% to the base wage with no changes to the rank incentives. Changed the board from $35 per meeting to $50. We did add language to not exceed 3 stipends per employee. And Chief Whitaker asked to add 2 stipends, one for a defensive tactics instructor and another for a drone operator. Each one of those would be $500 annual stipend. And then the same changes with the insurance premiums.
All right, questions? All right, is there a motion to take action on ordinance 2022-1004, the 2023 police salary ordinance?
So moved.
All right, and that's a motion to approve it.
That's a motion, yes.
All right.
Motion to approve
Thank you, Josh.
2022-1004.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, Cindy, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I just once again like to thank the Wage Task Force Committee, myself.
Took the words out of my mouth. Go for it.
Josh and Jeff for the hard work. And I'd like to thank Denny for his leadership. This is his first year, and he provided us with good, solid information and ideas and a starting point. I'd like to thank you for your generosity in working with the Wage Task Force and helping us come to a place where we could give our employees the type of raise that we're giving them this year. So, and then I'd like to thank the council for your support. You had a lot of good questions along the way, and we appreciate when people are actively involved because I think it produces a better product in the end. So thank you, everybody.
And I would totally echo everything Diane said. I also, again, want to make sure that we all understand that we started with the mid-year adjustments that were the result of a very purposeful wage study. I know we've been working since I've been mayor through past HR, Jennifer Whitaker, and now Denny, to try and keep our wages competitive. And there's always external changes This year was no shortage of that. So that really made, I think that gives credibility to what we've done to this point. We've got one more item that we'll be looking at before the end of the year, and that would be the elected official salaries. Again, those would be based on that wage study, and we'll have more discussion on that, probably start in November on that. So, but thank you all again for the Wage Committee for the way you've handled it this year. Again, I appreciate the gesture that I was generous, but I did what I think was important, was right, and most importantly, what we could afford, and what basically the math told us we needed to do. So, all right, well, thanks. All right, let's go to item 5. Tonight, we're having a second reading on ordinance 2022-1002. This is the ordinance that allows us to administer the electric vehicle charging stations. This morning, on a cold, brisk fall morning, we cut the ribbon down there, and I'm really excited about this, but I'm going to let Becca talk about it because this has been her program, and I think she said Thursday night these things were turned on, and give us what's going on the last few days.
Yeah, so Thursday night they got activated, and since then we've seen 18 different sessions already using the electric vehicle stations, the charging stations. Of those 18 sessions, it's been 5 different drivers, and the average session length is about an hour and a half. So this ordinance is asking for the city to charge an hourly fee to charge an electric vehicle, and after 2 hours, because the city agreed to allow free charging for 2 years for the first 2 hours. So after the first 2 hours, this ordinance allows us to charge a $2 fee to help cover our electrical costs. So far, we've dispensed 123 kilowatt hours, and they have already been used, and there's been very little information about them available to the public. Like Mayor Joe said, today we had a ribbon cutting, so that has been posted. I expect the use to go up as people find out that they exist.
And the stations themselves appear to be pretty easy to use. The one gentleman that was down there this morning was telling another guy how to use it. He found the app on his phone, and he did it all through his app. So I'm just really gratified that these things there was obviously a need, and we reacted with the help of MACOG, and Zimmer Biomet was a collaborator on this, but most importantly, Becca's the one that grabbed this thing, said we need to do this, and she's done a great job with it. But we got to make sure this ordinance passes on second reading, so we'll open it up to you for questioning.
I have just a couple questions since I wasn't here last week. So the first 2 years, and the city is reimbursed via the grant, is that correct?
So when the city signed the grant with MACOG, a regional cohort had decided that they were going to allow 2 hours of free charging for the first 2 years, and the city agreed to do that. So we are not getting reimbursed for those electrical charges unless an EV owner stays longer than 2 hours.
Okay. And my question then was, okay, it's $2 for an hour, and I'm assuming they're going to use a credit or debit card or something for that?
Yeah, they have
So then
to-
does that money comes back to the city?
Yes.
Okay, I was just questioning, knowing what credit card fees are and everything, whether the $2 is enough to really cover that?
So our electrical charges end up being about $1 an hour. And so the $2 an hour will help cover both the electrical charges as well as any meter fees and some of the installation costs as time goes on.
Maintenance, yeah.
Okay.
The majority of that fund from MACOG was used to install. It's primarily a capital expense. So-
Yeah, I just know that, if I run a credit card for a small amount, the fee is usually higher for that, so I just was questioning if we are able to recoup our fees on that.
We should be able to, yes.
Becca, did you say last time you thought it would take roughly 8 hours from these chargers to fully charge an electrical vehicle?
It depends on the range, but it's about 30 to 40 miles per hour that you'll get charged. So if you have a 400-mile range, it may take 10 hours. But the purpose of these stations is not to provide someone with a full charge necessarily. It's to provide the opportunity to get some of your mileage back while you can shop downtown and see the stores and visit the city of Warsaw.
Is there a required time? You said you had 18 charges, 5 different consumers, drivers. So there's obviously some repeat people. Is there an amount of time between when, if I pull in, I charge for an hour and a half, I leave, when's the soonest I can come back to use that facility again?
I believe it's right away,
Okay.
but you would have to come to your car, unplug it, and then reinitiate another session.
Okay.
And after the first 2 years, the ordinance that I have provided here and presenting would charge the $2 hourly rate from the start. So after 2 years, it'll be an hourly rate. However, for the first 2 years, it only starts after the first 2 hours of being charged.
And so we would have the opportunity then down the road if we need to revisit and
Yep.
reallocate the fees.
Absolutely.
But all that payment's through the app, correct?
Yes.
Just my brief math, it sounds like you can get 20 miles of driving for $1 if you have to pay the city the $2 fee. That seems like a pretty good deal.
Which if you're getting 20 miles per gallon, it's a quarter of the price.
I mean, it seems like, I won't be
Deal.
surprised if it's really popular.
Yeah.
And we talked last time about how electric vehicle drivers, they get that app on their car that tells them where a nearby charging station is. So I expect it'll bring a lot of people
Yeah.
to the downtown just to stop for a couple hours.
I don't
Shop
have
and
an
eat.
electric car. Do these chargers work with any car?
They work with any plug-in or electric vehicle. They would not work for a gas vehicle.
Well, yeah, obviously, but,
Okay.
but I thought Tesla had a proprietary charger and,
There's an adapter that they put onto the port and then stick into their car.
okay,
When you buy, I talked to a gentleman, when you buy the car, you're given an adapter.
okay.
Because Tesla makes their own charging stations. I believe there's 5 of them out at the Wyndham Garden.
Okay.
I think they're specifically for Tesla. But this one down here, this gentleman had an adapter in his glove compartment and pulled it out, stuck it on and popped it in. So they got that
Was he
figured
driving a
out.
Tesla?
Yeah,
So he had, okay, so he
Yep.
had an adapter to
For
adapt
this.
our charger to his Tesla?
Yep.
Okay.
You might want to remind everybody where they're located, just in case.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So there's one north of the courthouse on Main and Buffalo, and then there's one in the parking lot off of Jefferson and Buffalo.
and there's 2 charging stations, correct? Or is it
There's-
just one?
There's a total of 2 charging stations, and each station has 2 ports. So
And
you
they can go simultaneously,
Yes.
right? Okay. All right. And the other thing I noticed in here is it does provide that these stalls are to be only used while you're charging. And if you're not charging, there is a fine for parking there. Any further questions?
It's a start. It's a start.
Then I'll make a motion, we pass ordinance 2022-1002 on second reading.
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion or comments? All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Passes 5-0. Again, Becca, thank you.
Yes.
Also thank MACOG for getting involved, and again, local partners, Zimmer Biomet, for their collaboration on this as well. So, All right, thank you, Becca.
We already passed your salary, chief, so you can work another year.
Are you ready to present, Garrett?
Yeah, I can present.
Just kidding.
We're good, we're good. All right.
He's not used to slick roads yet.
Oh, that's true. And cold. All right, well, that's our old business for the evening. I have no new business. Are there any other matters to come before the council? Oh, yes, sir. Come on up, state your name.
All right. Hi, my name is Nate Callithan, and I know I was just listening to the discussion too about, trying to balance the budget and all of that. And my concern might actually help the committee, maybe not necessarily for this year, but for, down the road, long term. So just kind of like looking around like at a local zoning map and kind of what's coming up, what's being built. My concern is there's too much single family style that residents one zoning district here in Warsaw. My concern is the city is not going to be able to afford to maintain all of the infrastructure necessary for that. All of the roads, all of the plumbing, all of the electrical grid, all of that sewage, everything that's associated with that, plowing, maintaining sidewalks, all of that, on top of maintaining a lot of the commercial districts too that are like the strip malls and everything. There's a lot of costs associated with that. I don't know, is that a concern of the committee? Is there anything being done, to look into how we can potentially, are we looking to rezoning at all or no?
Nate, we've got a comprehensive plan that we revisit. I think this one is probably about 8 years old. Maybe it's a little older than that. But the comprehensive plan is basically looking at uses and zoning. We've got a plan commission and board of zoning appeals to address those matters. I'll tell you, you make a very good point. The budget is constantly a struggle with the inflation, and we've had a significant amount of annexation to try and provide more single-family homes. We're trying to balance that with increasing the density downtown and in our surrounding neighborhoods, going to smaller lots, zero lots, the duplexes. A lot of the new subdivisions have provisions within their plan for some of that duplexes. But you're right, we don't want to, the further we spread out, we're at a point now where we're spending money on 2 new lift stations that are one south and one north. But I would say it's also market-driven as far as who wants what. I know we've got homes within the community that are maybe similar in design and style to what you're talking about, townhomes, if you will. And, there's folks that prefer that and there's folks that don't. So there's a balance there. And I know probably the next time the Plan Commission and the council look at the comprehensive plan, they'll certainly continue to take those things into account. But growth and expansion and annexation does tend to spread your community out. And I know our planners have been really active to try and infill back within the city and also provide a little bit more dense housing opportunities. So points well taken. Anybody? I know.
Well, I would just say also that every time that we do vote on something like that, we receive a report with the estimated cost and services. So we know what the extra cost might be to the sewage plant, to the fire territory, to the police department. Because besides what you mentioned, infrastructure, but we also have services like fire and police that we need to provide our citizens too. So when we make those decisions, we take all those things into consideration. So that I would say we're not just annexing land to annex it. It's with a purpose, where it's located, and we've done an extensive housing study to show what kind of housing residents want here, and then looking at where that might be provided. So all those things are things to take into consideration. And then we have the tax increment financing districts that can help underwrite some of the costs of new development, things like you mentioned, like shopping centers and things like that, so that, a good example would be right now, all of the improvements that are being done out where the Carson's Elder Beerman used to be, in that area, and that comes, partly from the tax increment financing then, in order to help finance the infrastructure improvements that would need to be there. And then as the businesses come in, then they're paying their taxes to cover their costs. So everything is really interconnected, and initially it may seem like, how is that going to play out? But then as businesses begin to make more money and they pay more taxes, and we get more people in the community to work in those businesses and more people coming in to buy from those businesses, all those things contribute too. So we have a great planner that works on those types of things with us and provides us with that information, so that when we do make a decision, we're not just making it in a vacuum and hoping that this will work out okay, but we have a good idea of what it will cost.
Nate, I think the other thing to consider is we're showing significant growth in the community. We've grown 16% at the last census, which was about 2,500 new residents, and we need to find places for those folks to live. Our companies, like companies across the United States, are really battling to find adequate workforce. So we've got to make our community appealing, and we've got to make housing choices that workforce would certainly desire, to try and build our workforce as we grow. So there's a lot of dynamics, but you make some really keen observations about urban sprawl and not spreading out too far. You might have a future on one of the boards. Are you in school now?
No, I work as an environment now.
Oh, great. Great. Do you live in the city?
Yes.
All right.
Leave your name and address.
Yeah, leave your name and address for me. We're always looking for good board members. So that'd be great.
Okay. Yeah, because I know you talked about market rates, like kind of what the market is for what housing people want. My suggestion is the market is trending more towards not necessarily density, but walkability.
Yeah.
And so the major problem, I think, with the single-family developments, especially with the new ones that are being built, they aren't connecting the city in a walkable way. And so that's increasing the maintenance cost of everything, because then people have to drive, and that's what causes so many of the maintenance costs for roads and all of that stuff. Whereas a sidewalk, a bike path, something like that is minimal, near zero in comparison in the maintenance costs.
Yeah. Again, great points, and we've worked, we do have a bike ped plan that's been going since 2011, 2012. We're making pretty good progress with it. But again, great point, because those are the quality of life issues that folks look for when they look at our community. We hear it all the time. It's sometimes difficult with the existing infrastructure, but for the most part, I know Diane mentioned the housing study we did pre-COVID, and it identified a lot of the things you're talking about, and I think we need to get a little update on that, because I think those commuting patterns have changed even more since then, and I'm sure we'll be surprised at what we see. But again, the study we did, it actually wasn't a study, it was looking at existing demands, and I'm sure that fluctuates quite a bit. So be assured that your comments are taken seriously, and our planners and council, and myself, are really thoughtful in trying to lay this community out to where everybody can find that quality of life. And we've got great opportunity here, but your housing and all the other amenities need to support that, and I think that's really why we do what we do. Thanks, Nate. Anybody else? All right,
I'm just glad somebody shows up to
Yeah,
a meeting.
me too. Exactly.
To ask a question, because, since COVID, we haven't had much audience participation, so it's refreshing. Thank you.
very much so.
Well, thank
All
you.
right, thanks, Nate.
And come back.
All right,
Any of our scouts have any questions for us? I
Yeah,
thought so,
come on up
Kevin.
to
I
the
know you pretty
microphone.
well, so I figured that squiggling, you wanted to say something.
I just had a clarifying question about the new Tesla project, the electric car charging thing. It sounds like a very good project that is good for the community. And I was listening and I heard that there's going to be like a 2-hour free for the first 2 hours of charging. Is that correct?
yes, for 2 years.
For 2 years. Is that the driver's first time or that session's first 2 hours?
Becca, why don't you come up and clarify?
That's a great question. It is per session. Yeah, not per user, because there's no way for the charging station to recognize whether it's a different user or the same car.
So my question with that is, you said that there's no time difference between when you can plug it in and plug it in again. Is there any way to stop someone from taking it out and putting it back in immediately to not have any fees for a longer than 2-hour session?
That's exactly what I was wondering.
So, again, great question. The simple answer is no. There's not a way to stop someone from going back to their car every 2 hours, unplugging it, putting it back in the charging station, restarting a session, and putting it back in their car. However, they would have to go through all of those steps to do so, which may be a little bit of a hindrance. But yes, it could happen. Yep.
So down the road, if you see that does start to become an issue, this ordinance can probably be amended to address that issue.
I do not have the ability to see if the same driver is continuing to restart their session. I can see unique drivers, and I can see the number of sessions, and I can see the overall electricity use. I personally, as the administrator on the account, cannot see the person's name attached to each time they plug in their car. So I would not know whether it was the same driver continuing to do it over and over.
Isn't there a 2-hour time limit in the ordinance?
So the signs that are posted do say that there's a 2-hour limit. The signs also say that you can be parked there while you're charging. So
Monday through Friday, that's going to be monitored. So if people are there for 2 hours,
Yep.
they would get a ticket, or for over 2 hours.
They could, yes, yeah. There would also be a fee if they were there for more than 2 hours, assuming they didn't unplug their electric vehicle and plug it back in.
When they start to hook up their charging, don't they have to put in their credit card at that point?
Yes,
Okay, so then each time you pull it out and then you put it back in, you'd know whether they would,
ChargePoint, the brand of the EV station, deals with all of the financial and credit card processing. So that is not on the city. We just get paid through ChargePoint for it.
You don't swipe your card, it's all on your,
Yeah.
it's all on your phone. It's all
right,
done
but
on
they'd
your phone.
have a way of recording all that.
They might.
ChargePoint.
The city doesn't. The city
Yeah.
doesn't have access to that information, they just get paid.
We don't have access to people's credit cards.
I know, but the credit card company thing sure does.
Well, we've got a situation where folks get 2 hours of parking, and they'll go out and move their car, so they get 2 more hours of parking. Quite frankly, I don't see a big difference there. It's certainly doesn't meet the spirit of the ordinance, but people do it.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to ensure that you guys were getting what you intended with your grant. And so, yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Wow, who else? This is a good group back here. This has been a fun meeting
This is the
tonight.
most participation we've had
Yeah,
all
I
year.
know, it's been great.
All right.
Nobody else is brave.
No, that was great. All right. Well, we meet the first and third Mondays of every month in here, and you're all welcome back, 7 a.m. and
7 PM.
7 p.m. And you're keeping us on our toes, that's for sure. Especially we met at 7 a.m.
I might miss that 7 a.m.
Perhaps. All right.
We'll see you in the morning, Joe.
All right. Well, let's ask for a motion to adjourn if there's no other comments or questions.
Jerry, it's your job.
So moved.
All right. Thank you.
He was very well spoken.
People,
He was.
don't run away.
Okay.
Got something to say.
Yeah, we got something to sign.
Saw you practicing on yours.
He was very well spoken, wasn't he?